What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Behind Show. Today is September 6th, 2021, and in this video, I want to be kind of continuing my series doing some divisional previews for each NFL division. I recently did one of the AFC South, and in my opinion, that's the worst division in the NFL today. I'm going to be continuing this series doing the NFC South, which, in my opinion, right now is one of the better divisions in the NFL. The NFC South consists of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Atlanta Falcons, the New Orleans Saints, and the Carolina Panthers. All of these teams, in my opinion, are going to be really different this year, except for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They returned all their starters from last season. The Saints are going to be so much different, with Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, retiring. So let's go ahead and get started here with, in my opinion, probably going to be the worst team in the NFC South this season, and that is the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons in the offseason, traded Julio Jones to the Tennessee Titans. They got some, draft capital there for a rebuilding team. Honestly, thought they probably could have got a little bit more out of that trade, though. Lost starting center Alex Mack to the San Francisco 49ers. I think that is, that departure isn't really being talked about enough. I think that's not going to help Atlanta at all. I think that's a major blow to their offense, just like Julio Jones. Another departure here was Keanu Neal. He is, now with the Dallas Cowboys, reuniting with Atlanta Falcons former head coach and Dan Quinn. I think he's going to have much success there in Dallas. And the one thing I like the most about this, Atlanta Falcons offseason, it's not listed here, but their coach. They bring an offense coordinator from the Tennessee Titans and, Arthur Smith. I think he does have potential to be pretty nice for the Falcons in a couple of years once they, it's kind of weird because, you look at, Matt Ryan, he's kind of more towards the end of his career. Maybe they draft his replacement next season. Wouldn't be surprised at that at all, because I expect this Falcons team to have a pick in the top 10 again. So it's really interesting with the Falcons. With their, they actually had a top 5 pick this year, actually 4th overall, and they took Florida tight end Kyle Pitts. Many thought he was the best, not just, offensive prospect in the draft, not just the best tight end, but the best player overall in this NFL draft. And, it's not easy to disagree. Kyle Pitts was just phenomenal during his time with Florida. Definitely the best tight end prospect I've ever seen. And, he's one of those tight ends where you can line him up at wide receiver and you really want to notice a difference much at all. So I think that's a huge addition to the Atlanta Falcons. I really think that's going to help them out quite a bit. And they also bring in, former, the rivals in their division, the Carolina Panthers. They bring in former Carolina Panther running back, Mike Davis. He was pretty good last season, when Christian McCaffrey was injured. And I no longer have, Todd Gurley. That's not really on the key departures list here because, heading into last season, I feel like most people thought Todd Gurley was going to have a good season in Atlanta. And that could be nothing further away from the truth. Todd Gurley was horrendous during his time with the Atlanta Falcons. I believe that arguably could have been his worst year of his career, a major disappointment. And just honestly, last year was just a major disappointment for the Atlanta Falcons. They finished the season 4-12. In my opinion, heading into last year, I honestly thought they were a playoff team. They ended the season on a high note. They bring in this, nice running back and Todd Gurley. And then within a month into the season, they fired their head coach and Dan Quinn. Last year was just a major disappointment for the Atlanta Falcons. And but I feel like Arthur Smith, their new head coach, can bring some light, into this team and give them a couple years. Wouldn't be surprised if we see them back in playoff contention. Kind of the next team I'll be talking about on this NFC South divisional preview is the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints lost quite a bit of players in the offseason. Let's start with Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. It's been kind of talked about for a couple of years that Brees will retire, and it officially happened in this past offseason. That's going to be a major blow to the Saints, team. Brees was not what he used to be this past couple of seasons, but just his how smart he is and his intelligence when it comes to the football field. I think that's something they're going to miss the most. He might not be able to throw 50-yard passes anymore, but his IQ in the field, he'll be able to see the defensive schemes and change of plays or something like that. which I think is very, very important for an NFL quarterback. And a couple other departures here. They lost Malcolm Brown. That is not on the list of players' departure. They lost him, I believe, to the Jacksonville Jaguars, a starting defensive tackle. They lost Jared Cook to the LA Chargers, which to me, I don't really feel like that's a huge departure. They drafted Adam Trautman from Dayton a year or so ago. I feel like he has a little bit of potential. They also lost starting edge rusher Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson had 13.5 sacks last season, which is, that is a ton. That's almost as much as the team he signed with, the Cincinnati Bengals, had all of last season, which is just crazy. But, looking at this, they lost 2 starters on the defensive line. They lose a top 5 quarterback of all time. They lose their starting tight end. And, Michael Thomas is in the PUP list for the first 6 games of the year, and supposedly he once traded. So, we might end up seeing, Michael Thomas on this key departures list here as well. The Saints are not going to be what they used to. I am very, very, very intrigued by Jameis Winston and Sean Payton's offense. I feel like that has potential to be very, very fun to watch. Jameis Winston, to me, every single time, people talk about the 2019 season, they talk about how horrible Jameis Winston was, throwing for 30 touchdowns, but he also threw 30 picks. He threw for 5,000 yards. The picks were a major issue. And my thing is with Jameis Winston, he threw for over 5,000 yards, over 30 touchdowns in his first year with a new head coach, his first year with a new offense coordinator. And I was just looking, the other day because, I always try to defend Winston, about this, which is weird because honestly, when he was in college, I was not a fan of him at all. But 13 of those 30 interceptions were drops that turned into interceptions. To me, that's a mind-boggling stat, and I really don't think that that's talked about enough. And I feel like Sean Payton, he knows what Jameis Winston's going to do this season. I feel like right now, Jameis Winston's a better quarterback throwing-wise. He has more arm talent than Drew Brees. Accuracy, now that's a different, completely different story. But I really feel like Jameis Winston has potential to thrive in this New Orleans Saints offense, but I still think he's going to struggle like he did in that 2019 season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, I'm very intrigued by Winston, with him starting this year in New Orleans. I really feel like they should have named a starter much, much sooner than they did. I don't think anybody thinks that Taysom Hill is capable of starting an NFL game as quarterback. In my opinion, he's not really even a quarterback. He's kind of like what, Tim Tebow should have been in the NFL, years ago. But I'm very intrigued by Winston. And, the one departure to me, the one addition to me, everybody talks about this, with the 17th pick overall, the Raiders took offense tackle from Alabama, Alex Leatherwood. That pick was horrible. I hated that pick. Honestly, this was the worst pick of the first round, and it's not even debatable in my opinion. Just people don't talk about it enough because, everybody loves to, hit on the Raiders. And, they drafted Peyton Turner, the edge rusher from Houston. He had a phenomenal pro day. If it wasn't for his pro day, the Saints could have got him in the 3rd round. With his pro day, that really, helped us draft stock. So he could have even been in with the 2nd round pick. Getting him in the 1st round to me was just a horrible, horrible, horrible reach. Definitely the worst pick of the 1st round. And, just because I hate the pick like a lot doesn't mean that's not a key addition to their team. Peyton Turner is going to be the replacement for Trey Hendrickson, who was lost to the Cincinnati Bengals in the offseason. So I feel like, maybe he's going to have a big role with this team. Maybe he is successful in this New Orleans offense. But the fact that he's your only addition in the offseason, to me, isn't really good for the Saints. It's going to be interesting to see how they perform this upcoming season. As we continue here, we have the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers, if you've seen my videos before, I am very, 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 very high on the Carolina Panthers this season. They lost Teddy Bridgewater, who I believe he was 0-8 in either a game-winning or a game-tying 4th quarter drives last season. And that, to me, that's why I'm not sold on Teddy Bridgewater and the Broncos. That's why I wasn't sold on him, when he started last season in Carolina. They also lost, starting defense tackle Kawan Short and starting wide receiver Curtis Samuel to the Washington football team to pair him with former Carolina head coach Ron Rivera. Those are some key. Those are some key departures, and those guys, losing those guys, that's a little bit of a blow to your team. But look at these additions for a second. Sam Darnold, he has sucked in New York. There's no other way to put it. He has been, he's underachieved. He has sucked. He has been, just not good with New York. Sam Darnold has never, ever, ever, ever had a team like this in the Carolina Panthers. Sam Darnold has had, a very inconsistent offensive line with his time with New York. He's not had good receivers in New York. Now he has a ton of good receivers with the Carolina Panthers. They have the best running back in the NFL who can catch out of the backfield, Christian McCaffrey. I'm very excited to see Sam Darnold. Because you look at this. Joe Brady made Joe Burrow one of the best quarterbacks in college football history in just 1 year. Imagine what he can do with Sam Darnold, who, lots of people coming in the draft, several years ago thought he was going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I feel like Joe Brady might get the best out of Sam Darnold. And when you get the best out of Sam Darnold, you're going to get the best out of this Carolina Panthers team. I feel like Carolina Panthers, a lot of their wins and losses will determine how consistent Sam Darnold is this year. Because some of their other key additions, they bring in J.C. Horn, a corner from South Carolina University. Lots of people kind of confused with that first round pick, including myself. But I really feel like they made up for it just in the offseason and really their second round pick. Like I mentioned just a second ago, he was a former offense coordinator at LSU, Joe Brady. He was fantastic, made Joe Burrow amazing. And one of Joe Burrow's, targets at LSU was LSU wide receiver Terrace Marshall Jr., who, everybody talks about Jamar Chase, everybody talks about Thaddeus Moss, but Terrace Marshall Jr. had around 500 or 600 receiving yards and 10 receiving touchdowns during the national championship year at LSU. And the fact that Joe Brady gets to connect with Terrace Marshall Jr. again, to me, that is just amazing. That was a perfect pick by the Carolina Panthers, in my opinion. Definitely one of the best picks in the entire NFL draft. Getting somebody that you're familiar with, you've had experience with before, and you made him look phenomenal at LSU. I think that was a tremendous pick there by the Carolina Panthers. So you have Sam Darnold, the quarterback, who I think is going to be good this year. Maybe not great, but I feel he's going to be better, much, much, much better than Teddy Bridgewater was last year. You have Christian McCaffrey, the best running back in the NFL. You bring in Terrace Marshall Jr., who already has familiarity with Joe Brady at LSU. You bring in Robbie Anderson. He's been on the team last season. But, Robbie Anderson was on your team, who Sam Darnold has familiarity with during his time with the New York Jets. And then you have, in my opinion, I would say tied for the most underrated receiver in the NFL today, easily, and DJ Moore. DJ Moore, to me, is extremely underrated. He never gets the credit that he deserves. I would say he's a top 12, top 15 receiver in the NFL today, easily. And when you have those really four weapons, including Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield, it's going to be hard to not see, Sam Darnold succeed. Sam Darnold has everything he wants to succeed. He has so many offensive, talented players on his roster. He has a great offensive-minded coach who can get the best out of him, just like he got the best of the Joe Burrow. I feel like this Carolina Panthers team is not being talked about enough. They were 5-11 last year. I've seen some people say they're going to get 5 wins this year. To me, that's crazy. They're going to get way more than 5 wins. This Carolina Panthers team is a playoff caliber team. It's not being talked about enough. Very, very, very excited to see this Carolina team this year. I've mentioned it multiple times. They're one of my surprise teams for a reason. They're going to be fun to watch, regardless if they do end up going to the playoffs or not. So that kind of goes to our last team here in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Key departures, nobody. They literally lost nobody. Last season they were 11-5, which is kind of wild. You would expect them to win more games. They actually did not even end up winning their own division, which is just mind-boggling, despite them, winning the Super Bowl and everything. But you look at their key additions. They have no drastic, key additions that will contribute to the team right now. I would say maybe aside from Giovanni Bernard. They have multiple running backs, like Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette. Then you have a guy who can catch out of the backfield like Giovanni Bernard, getting him from Cincinnati, in the offseason. I feel like that just adds more depth to a team that has so much depth to begin with. And then we'll go to the right here. Jalen Darden. Jalen Darden was one of my favorites. Well, I would say he was a tie for my favorite wide receiver in this draft class from North Texas. In my draft videos, I kept on mentioning Jalen Darden has potential to be the next Tyreek Hill. Similar size, similar, school, late round pick, similar speed. I feel like Jalen Darden has potential to succeed and thrive in this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, especially, Chris Godwin is a free agent 1 year from now. If he were, to leave in the offseason, I think Jalen Darden has potential to maybe step up in a year or so and, have a huge leap in production. Maybe give him a year or so. And then, I like Florida quite a bit in college football. And, every time Florida's on, I always try my best to watch them. And, watching, Kyle Trask, to me, I feel like the best possible fit for him was this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. And that's exactly what they did. The last pick of the second round. A-plus pick by the Buccaneers, in my opinion. This is, you hear all the time, Garoppolo could be Tom Brady's successor, or Jarrett Stidham, or, whoever it may be. This is going to be Tom Brady's successor. I know we hear that a lot, but I really feel like this one and Kyle Trask will be. And I feel like Kyle Trask has potential to thrive in this team too. He's kind of like Brady in the fact, like, he doesn't have, good really legs at all. He has limited athleticism. But to me, Kyle Trask's best quarterback comparison, in my opinion, is Derek Carr, the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders. Limited athleticism, best in short passes, good deep ball, but it could be inconsistent at times, similar build and everything like that. And when you give all these weapons to Kyle Trask, he will be great for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's one of those quarterbacks where you have to kind of give him, weapons. And he can, the weapons and the team can carry him, more so him carry the team. We kind of saw that with Florida. There was times where, especially, look at that bowl game against Oklahoma. Kadarius Toney and Kyle Pitts were not playing. And Kyle Trask just looked absolutely lost out there. But I feel like with all these weapons the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, Kyle Trask has no reason not to succeed. This was, to me, one of the just perfect fits in the NFL draft, along with the Joe Brady, pairing and reuniting with Terrace Marshall Jr. in Carolina. Trask, to me, he's not going to start this year, obviously, not going to start next year. I would say maybe his third or fourth year, depending. But, like I was saying, these, aside from Giovanni Bernard, none of these, additions are really going to mean a big part of this team, but maybe more so down the future. And the fact that they just lost nobody and the key departures is just mind-boggling. They bring back all their starters from last year. They're 11-5. They were Super Bowl champs last year, and they're going to definitely be Super Bowl contenders this year. Wouldn't be surprised if they ended up winning the Super Bowl again this year. So kind of going through all four of these teams in the Falcons, Saints, Panthers, and Buccaneers, key departures and key additions. Here are my record predictions for each of these four teams. Looking at this here, I just see we'll kind of go from bottom to up. The Atlanta Falcons 4-13. I can maybe see them getting maybe a win or two more, but just with losing Julio Jones and you weren't able to win many games last year, you do bring in Kyle Pitts, but I just think it'll be a long year for Atlanta. I kind of mentioned earlier, I think they're going to have another year with a top 10 pick. Their defense is inconsistent. Matt Ryan's towards the end of his career. I just don't see many wins for the Atlanta Falcons this year. As we see for the New Orleans Saints, I have them 8-9. I know lots of people do not think they're going to get 8 wins. And this is interesting because I can see the Saints getting anywhere to 6 to 9 wins. It all depends on Jameis Winston's consistency. If he can be more consistent than he was in 2019, which I do think he was better than people give him credit for in 2019. But you look at it, and with Sean Payton, I feel like he has potential to be good. But another thing, like I was mentioning earlier, with Michael Thomas, being on the PUP list, that's going to hurt this New Orleans team a lot. I'm very intrigued by this Saints team. I feel that the coaching and the experienced players like Cameron Jordan and players like that might step up and maybe get this Saints team a couple wins that they might not necessarily get, but they're able to pull off some upset victories. Next is the Carolina Panthers at 8-9. I can see this Panthers team winning 7 to, let's say, 10 games this year. I am very excited for the Panthers. Honestly, I would probably have them a little bit higher on the win total if I knew that Sam Darnold can be more consistent. I mean, think about it. They won 5 games last year. They were with, like I was mentioning earlier, Teddy Bridgewater 0-8 in game-winning drives or game-tying drives in the fourth quarter. I feel like, Sam Darnold's capable of getting just a couple of those. That's already 7-8 wins compared to last season. You have a much, much, much better team than you had last year. And I feel like this Panthers team is a playoff contender. I know I had them being under 500, but I feel like 7 to 10, I think that's what you're going to get from the Carolina Panthers. Because I feel like, Sam Darnold's going to take a huge step, forward and have the best year of his career this season. Very excited for the Panthers, and I'll keep talking about it, but they're going to be so much fun to watch. And then we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like I mentioned, they were 11-5 last season. They bring back all their starters. They were Super Bowl champs. They're expected to repeat. But, the best teams in the NFL still lose a couple games a year. They always have that 1 or 2 games where they should end up losing. Last year, Tampa Bay was losing to the Chicago Bears on Thursday Night Football. But, it's obvious that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to win this NFC South division. After that, the order is kind of interesting. I've talked to people. Some people think the Saints will be last. Some people think the Panthers will be last, which to me is just kind of crazy. And some people, like myself, believe the Atlanta Falcons will finish last in the NFC South. So it's pretty much Panthers and 2, 3, 4. I mean, who knows where it's going to be. But this NFC South team, this division, I think it's a little bit better than people would think. I know only one team is over 500, but I feel like this division is very competitive. Falcons having 4 wins. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe have 1 or 2 more, like I mentioned. The Saints team is interesting. I think they're going to be around that 500 area, along with the Carolina Panthers. They might not get a ton of wins, but I think they're going to be much more competitive than people think. Then obviously Tampa Bay, they're going to run the table in the NFC South division. So that was kind of my NFC South divisional preview for each NFL team in NFC South. The Atlanta Falcons, the New Orleans Saints, the Carolina Panthers, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Thank you all so much for watching. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would really, really, really appreciate it. And I will see you all next time on the Sports 2 Hunt Show.